Well, we return with 4 match days to go for most sides in this EFL Championship season, and we return again after another bonkers midweek match day because none of the top 3 won. Plenty of teams missed the opportunity to pull away at the bottom, perhaps only one did in the end, and the playoff race is still fairly tight with a number of teams in it after the results on Tuesday and Wednesday night. So we are here today for matchday 43 predictions for the EFL Championship. We're going to go through all 12 games, preview and predict the scores. And I'll encourage you, as always, to do the same in the comments below. Thank you for continuing to play along in your numbers. If this week you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next full recap when we look ahead to matchday 44, albeit we've got a little mini midweek special coming up in between. And there's also League One predictions via shorts and Premier League previews tomorrow as Luton travel to the champions Manchester City. But before we go and look ahead to matchday 43 in the Championship, we need to have a look back at another strange midweek because a number of home bankers and away bankers fooled us and we ended up with poor scores pretty much across the board. I managed to get 6 points, largely thanks to the Championship's favourite scoreline delivering me a perfect score for Plymouth v QPR. Those 3 points were added to by a point for the Preston win, the Bristol City win, nobody got 5-0 strangely enough, and West Brom, who for the first time I didn't predict to win 2-0 at home, and guess what happened? Of course they did. Despite the fact I only got 6 points, I was in the top half for all the comments with your predictions, and that shows what a bonkers week it was, because 6 points would normally be nowhere near. But let's run through those of you who were level or above me. Reach joined the party on 6, albeit you did it through 6 correct outcomes, no perfect score. W&G won past us with 1 perfect score and 7 points. Simon and Swifty both on 8, Swifty 2 perfect scores, Simon 1. 5 of you on 9 points tied. Bobby got 1 perfect score, and then Peter, Lewis, Chris and Ojo all with 2. The top of the tree, the only person to make double figures, and another great showing, 2 match days in a row. Teo with 11, 2 perfect scores, the most correct outcomes. And I've got to be fair, both your perfect scores were for 2-all draws. Have you found the Championship's new favourite scoreline? A cracking effort from you. But that's matchday 42 out the way. Let's try and dissect matchday 43 and apply either common sense or wild guesses. I haven't decided which I'm going to go for yet. We start on the Friday night with Plymouth Argyle versus Leicester City. A huge game at the top of the table and arguably an even bigger one in a relegation battle because Plymouth are 2 points clear of that relegation zone with a 1-1 draw at home to Plymouth. Backed up that win away at Rotherham. And yes, they relied on a late own goal, but they just about kept QPR in touching distance and they kept themselves above the dotted line. It would have been a 1 point gap, it's now 2. And that combined with their goal difference is going to be crucial at this stage. There's no doubt that QPR had the best chances of the game. And if they did have a clinical goal scorer, Plymouth would have been really struggling to get anything here. They stayed in the game, they got one late. And ultimately, it don't matter how you play at this point. They stopped one of their rivals winning and they got a point, which in the end was crucial. For Leicester, no one saw that coming, did they? A 1-0 defeat away at Millwall. But we mentioned it last episode. The away form is struggling a little bit. You just don't see where these are coming from. For a Millwall side we know doesn't create much under Neil Harris, but is defensively disciplined. And Leicester couldn't really open him up. They had one great chance, they had loads of the ball, and they got him behind once or twice. But generally, Leicester just struggled with a disciplined Millwall performance. They were forced wide, they were winning plenty of corners and set pieces and weren't able to take advantage of them. And then got done by a goal. And once you do that with an hour on the clock, you allow Millwall to sit back and invite the pressure. So a really difficult day for Leicester, who remarkably stayed top because none of the other top 3 won. But does that bring Southampton back into it is mad. I have no idea what to go for here because Leicester's away form recently has been awful. Plymouth haven't won a home game in God knows how long. I'm going to go for Leicester to win. I feel I have to go with logic. It's going to happen eventually. Based on Plymouth's performance as well as result in midweek and the fact that they're normally a bit more open at the back, I'm going to go for Leicester City to win it by their favourite score of 2-1. But I'm aware that's what I went for in midweek. With that one out the way on Friday night, we move on to Saturday lunchtime, where third place Leeds United have the chance to take advantage against Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn, after winning 5-1 at Sunderland, were in a 4-0 draw against Southampton. then went and lost 5-0 at Bristol City and seemingly gave up late in the game. It was a pretty dismal effort defensively. They actually have more of the ball. But this is the Blackburn that we saw before John Eustace came in that just couldn't defend to save its life. But it has lost a bit of its attacking threat, which is a bit of a concern moving into the summer. For them, no, they just need to pick up a result. They're only 3 points away now. They've got the worst defence in the Championship aside from Rotherham. And Leeds United are a side that know how to attack. So we know that John Eustace is going to set up for a draw. It will be very similar to what they did at home to Southampton and Ipswich. The question is, can Leeds find a way through where Middlesbrough didn't, where Southampton didn't, but where Ipswich did? And that's going to be the question, because 4 of the last 6 games Blackburn haven't scored. At home, Leeds are normally pretty solid defensively. Clean sheets against Millwall and Sunderland, 2 of their last 3. A disappointment in midweek. I know there was a bit of controversy with it, but a very similar story to what we saw with the Millwall against Leicester game. If you sit deep against a side that's got the onus on them, that needs to try and get a win to get in the promotion mix, you're going to cause a bit of tension if you get to 20, 25, 30 without conceding. And it really is going to be difficult because it wasn't the best display in the world. And in this game, I could almost see there being a little bit of a shock. I could see Leeds United being forced to play possession football. I could see them having no space in behind for their wide players. I mean, this could easily be a 0-0. But I'm going to go for all the big sides to bounce back. Leicester to win by 2-1, and Leeds to win ugly by 1-0. Could be anything, but they're going to nick it for me. As we move on to the first of the 3 p.m. kickoffs and a game that's big in both the playoff race and the race against relegation. It is Birmingham City versus Coventry City. Birmingham now second bottom after a crushing 1-0 defeat at home to Cardiff. One moment from Josh Bowler, enough for the visitors, and for Birmingham, it's another one of those performances. Only one shot on target again. Didn't create bundles of great chances, and to be second bottom now, Swansea have pulled themselves out of it. They're gradually running out of teams that they can catch easily. This game then becomes crucial, and let's be honest, on paper, Coventry at home should be a more tricky game because Coventry were beaten 2-1 away from home at Southampton. They gave it a go in the second half. They came back into it, but I think it would be fair to say that Southampton just edged the game and the territory overall. But Coventry largely have been in good form, bar that blip against Cardiff, ironically. And they've always been scoring goals. They've scored in all of their last 6. It's been an Achilles heel for Birmingham, who have had, 3 1-0 defeats at home in their last 4. And it just makes me think, is that going to happen again? Coventry are a side that do concede goals, so one of those records has got to go at this point. I'm going to go for Birmingham to get a goal, but I'm not sure it'll be enough. The Championship's favourite scoreline's a contender here. I'm going to go for the visitors by 2-1. As we move on to the Championship's most unpredictable team, unless they've got nothing to play for, then they're suddenly world class. It is Bristol City versus relegation fight in Huddersfield Town. If the midweek fixtures are anything to go by, this should be an absolute tanking because Bristol City beat Blackburn 5-0. Wells and Conway both with a brace, Mehmeti another. They look very good, it's got to be said, but again, Bristol City are a great side when there's no pressure on them. They've left it too late for the playoffs, but 4 clean sheets in a row, and against a Huddersfield side that away from home had an absolute stinker at Preston. Lost by 4-1, albeit 3 of those coming late on, but from 1-0 up at half-time. What a dismal position to be in. And it is the concern I raised with Huddersfield, with the manager I'm a big fan of, is he trying to change too much too soon, and has the team got the quality and the fitness to do it? A lot of players have spent much of the season out long-term injured. They had that problem when they were under Darren Moore, and as a result, the physical conditioning is probably not in its prime place, and I think that showed late on in the game. They did also struggle to deal with set pieces. They struggled to deal with balls into the box, and that is not a good sign for a side fighting relegation, especially with Sheffield Wednesday doing all right below them. So for me, I have to go for a home win here. It looks on paper like a home banker. We've all said this before against Bristol City. We know what happens here. I'm going to go for them to win and keep another clean sheet because the form book says they will. But we all know what's happening. So no surprises if it goes the other way. I'm going Bristol City by 2-0. As we move on to another big game in both the playoff and the relegation battles, it is Hull City versus QPR. 2 sides that drew in midweek. Hull a little disappointed to be pegged back by Middlesbrough, or perhaps pleased after going one down early on. A really decent game between two good sides who in my book will both just miss out, and a result that probably helped neither of them by leaving both 6 points away, albeit Hull have got that game in hand now. They did dominate the ball, they did show intent, but for me, a draw was a fair result based on the good chances created by both. For QPR, a 1-1 draw away from home at Plymouth, gifting them a goal with an OG late on. And I've said the same with QPR for a while now. They're just missing a clinical striker. They had probably 2 or 3 great opportunities to put the game out of sight. They didn't. They let Plymouth back into it, and we know they're a little brittle defensively. In the end, a draw's not a bad result, keeps them below and keeps QPR in 16th. Marti Cifuentes done an excellent job, but he's got to get them over the line here. And then in the summer, God, he's got to find someone who can regularly put the ball in the net. So for me, this game is going to be pretty tight. I know both have been involved in games with a few goals recently, but QPR do struggle to take chances. Hull have got that individual quality, so I'm going to go for that to prevail. I'm going to go for the Tigers to win this one and stay just in the playoff mix with a 2-1 victory at home to QPR. As we move on to a big game in the battle for promotion and the playoffs at Portman Road, it is Ipswich Town versus Middlesbrough. Ipswich frustrated, 2 blanks in a row as they drew 0-0 at home to Watford. They did have one great chance, and to be fair, they were the aggressors in the game, but we didn't quite see that normal composure and ruthlessness in the final third. We didn't quite see that same intensity, and to be fair, Watford at times defended well. But there was just that little bit missing for them, as there was against Norwich in the derby the week before. Is it just coming at the wrong time? It was my worry looking ahead towards the end of the season. Middlesbrough are a side that are a nightmare to play at this point as well, because one, they're in great form, an unbeaten form, but away to the top sides, they've been good this year. They won away at Leicester, they drew at Southampton, they drew at Hull in midweek. They've carried a threat on the road, and defensively they're starting to find their feet. This is one of the worst games for me that Ipswich could have had at this point. An informed side that are better against the top teams, don't offer up a huge amount. Latiaf's coming back to form and fitness. Middlesbrough have got to win to stay in the playoff race, so I can see them being a thorn in the host side here. We've said from a neutral point of view, a lot of people would like Ipswich to come up, and I certainly wouldn't be averse to it. I think this might be a difficult game for them. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline and sit on the fence with a 1-1 draw. I've just got a feeling that Borough will get something here. As we go to a big game for a team at the bottom end of the table who picked up a crucial surprise win in midweek, it is Millwall versus Cardiff City. Both sides won 1-0 in the midweek fixtures. Cardiff away at Birmingham, let's get that out of the way. Nothing to play for, a solid mid-table season, a lot better than a lot of us expected. They were disciplined, they restricted Birmingham to next to nothing. They created 1 or 2 chances, and Josh Bowler, showing why he'd been signed. Very good effort from them. And 2 good away wins in succession against Birmingham and Coventry, albeit disappointment at home either side of those. For Millwall, it had just dried up after Neil Harris came in, but that was the sort of game they needed. No pressure, no expectation to be the attacking force or the aggressive team in the game. Gave up possession, sat behind the ball, forced Leicester to try and play around them, which they couldn't. They were disciplined defending corners, which they faced a lot of in the game. They forced Leicester wide. They were really strong in their game plan, which Neil Harris deserves credit for. I'll be interested to see what happens next season when they are forced to come out and try and play a bit. But for now, he's doing the job that was asked, and that was tactically very good against Leicester, and the only way they could have got a result. So really impressive there. 1 win here and you feel they're safe. It'll take them to 50 points. But Cardiff, as we said, a couple of good away wins, pretty robust on the road defensively as well. Is this a game they're going to come out? I'm not too sure. I was going to go 1-0 again, but I feel someone's going to nick this. You know what? I'm going to go for Cardiff. I think they might nick another away win here. I think they've got the type of player, in a bowler, for example, who can produce that moment of magic when Millwall maybe putting 9 or 10 behind the ball. So I'm going to go for Cardiff to nick it, to defend their set piece as well, and to win 1-0 away at the Den. As we move on to arguably game of the weekend in the playoff race, it is Preston North End versus Norwich City. 2 teams in pretty decent form, certainly defensively, when it comes to their results recently. And with Norwich now 5 points ahead of Preston, but having played a game more, this game could be really decisive in whether Norwich are a playoff team or whether Coventry, Preston, Middlesbrough and Hull have got a chance to catch them. Preston, Great late show against Huddersfield in midweek. From 1-0 down at the break to win 4-1's a good effort. They did actually have the better of the game, which we often accused them of not doing so. And they took advantage late on of Huddersfield's fatigue and ill-discipline to win the game comfortably. Really good result and a decent performance for them at this stage of the season, albeit a little nervy in the first half. For Norwich, frustration from 2-0 up against Wednesday. They should have been sitting here with a big advantage, but they were pegged back. And it is one Achilles heel for Norwich this year, is defensively they are suspect. Yes, going forward they're great. They probably should have scored more. Josh Sargent at it again. But when Sheffield Wednesday started throwing things forward late on, they couldn't cope. And defensively they got found out. So a very difficult day for them in the end. It could have been so much better. And this game becomes very hard to predict because Preston we've seen very rarely dominate games. I wouldn't expect them to against Norwich. I would expect them to score. It's whether Norwich take their chances. So for me, as much as I was tempted to go one more for a 2-2 draw, which seems to be the new Championship's favourite scoreline, Preston have got 3 clean sheets in their last 5. 3 for Norwich in their last 6. Norwich have been one of the form teams in the division, albeit their exceptional record was at home. And Preston, do you know what? They've played at home to some of the bottom teams. Stoke, where they were beaten. But then they've had a run of games, haven't they? Plymouth, Rotherham, Birmingham, Watford, Huddersfield. This is the toughest game they've had for a while. And I think they'll drop points. I'm not going to go for a Norwich win. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline again. 1 goal apiece at Deepdale. Well, if that was a huge game in the playoff race, how about this one at the bottom? Sheffield Wednesday versus Stoke City. 22nd v 19th. Separated by 3 points. This is an absolute barnstormer. We mentioned it a moment ago with the Norwich game. Sheffield Wednesday did so well to get a point out of that. They threw the kitchen sink late on. They got a couple of goals. And you know what? Danny Roll's done a great job there. They deserve to be in the mix. And no one thought they would be when he took over. So I can only keep speaking highly of him. And hope for their sake that he keeps them up. Because otherwise he's going to be a very wanted man in the summer. On the flip side of that, just as it looked like Stoke were playing well and getting away from things a bit, 5 points in 3 games unbeaten, starting to show that they could score goals as well. They go to Swansea, they're beaten 3-0 very comfortably, and it was a pretty dismal display, and that is Stoke City in a nutshell. 1 shot on target, didn't offer a huge amount. Swansea comfortable and deserved winners. Yes, Stoke had a few set pieces and a few chances from wide areas, but Swansea were the better side. They created more of the chances and they created the better chances and they deserved to win the game. So we're going to stick with a very big result here. I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to win it. I could see Stoke being maybe the more dominant side in possession, but Wednesday on the break have got a great threat. They've got good options in the box. They've got physicality in there too. I'm going to go for them to win it. I'm going to go, I think, by 2-0 and get out the relegation zone in doing so. This could be a big weekend for Wednesday. As we move on to a side that have maybe just clawed their way back into the automatic promotion race, it is Southampton versus Watford. Southampton won their first in 4 with a 2-1 victory at home to Coventry City. A really important win for them, and they were the better side in that game, albeit they weren't vintage in front of goal and they didn't create bundles of chances, but they did enough to win the game and deservedly did. For Watford, 4 draws in a row under Tom Cleverley. It was a 0-0 Ipswich though, which is a very respectable result. Fairly disciplined defensively, but maybe a bit closer to the type of performance we were used to seeing under Ishmael, rather than the first couple against Leeds and West Brom, where they were really aggressive going forward. And this game's going to be interesting for that, because Southampton will dominate the ball. We know that Russell Martin's team will play out from the back. Will Watford be brave and press them? Will they sit back in their own half, pick their moments? Will they hit them on the counter? I mean, they've got nothing to play for, nothing to lose. Southampton, well, realistically, with Leicester and Leeds coming up in their final 3 games, they've got to win every one between now and then. They've got that big game in midweek. If they win both, they're on 84 and they're right back in the mix. So for me, I'm going to go for Southampton to do it. Maybe they're timing their run right. I'm going to go for them to nick this game at home to Watford by 2-1 in a nervy encounter. 2 to go, and we move on to the game that is normally the home banker of the week. It is Swansea City versus Rotherham United. Yes, Rotherham got that win against Millwall, but back-to-back defeats without scoring since. And that Millwall game, in fact, the only one in their last 5 where they have scored. They're relegated to League One. They need to rebuild. And against West Brom again, It was a very comfortable day for the Baggies, let's be honest, because West Brom don't often create a huge amount of chances, but Rotherham didn't show any attacking intent, and at the moment, it almost looks as if they're just trying to keep it respectable, which is a bit of a shame, but a very disappointing season for them. The less said, the better. For Swansea, safe now, you've got to say. Luke Williams has done his job. He's met the mantra. He has got them to 50 points. He got a big win against Stoke. And in a game where, a bit like the Cardiff one a couple of weeks ago, they're coming up against a side that is a big pressure game. They've got expectation of getting a result and a performance for different reasons. That one being a derby, this one being a side in and around them. They had that disappointment in between against QPR at home. So I think it's a really good performance and result. Slightly different style from Williams, didn't dominate the ball completely throughout the game, but created a lot of chances. So Swansea City, a very good result for them. And I can see it being similar again. Rotherham, poor at the back, no threat going forward. I'm going to go for Swansea to win by the same score again. 3-0 at home to Rotherham United. And the final game asks me just one question. Do I go back to the banker scoreline? It is West Bromwich Albion versus Sunderland. West Brom probably just need one more result to guarantee the playoffs, depending on other scorelines this weekend. They got back to winning ways with a 2-0 against Rotherham. And despite the fact they've not been vintage and winning games in recent weeks, and defensively they have been a little disappointing at times, they've just kept that unbeaten run going. And Carlos Corberán, there are so many similarities to that Huddersfield team, which make them a big threat for whoever they end up facing from that big four. Whereas for Sunderland, 2 0-0 draws in a row. It's been more about respect after that Blackburn game. A really solid effort at Leeds. Okay, a moment of controversy in there. But defensively, they were disciplined. They restricted a below par Leeds to not a lot, to be honest. And ironically, if you take away that Blackburn game, it's actually 4 clean sheets in a row in the Championship, which is remarkable. So this game promises to be tight, but I do worry that Sunderland offer very little on the break. Yes, they had that day against Cardiff, but West Brom are going to be more disciplined at the back. We know West Brom are good goal scorers. They normally go for 2 a game. They create few but very good chances. And I'm going to go for their scoreline. West Brom at home, 2-0 is the safe prediction. Yes, they might concede the odd one, but for me, I'm going for 2-0 and to secure their place in the Championship playoffs this year. So with that out the way, let's have a quick look of what I've gone for this weekend. And I've gone for a few less goals than we saw in midweek, which may end up coming back to bite me. And I've also gone for Ipswich to be the big losers at the top 4 this weekend. Gone for them to draw at home to Middlesbrough, with all the other 3 to pick up nervy, narrow victories. I've also gone for Sheffield Wednesday to break clear of the relegation zone, with Huddersfield to lose away at Bristol City. And I've gone for some big games in the playoff race as well, with West Brom almost securing their place and Norwich and Preston playing out a 1-1 draw. But those are just my predictions for matchday 43. Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know in the comments below, and more importantly, give me your predictions for this weekend's action. If you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in midweek. When we do, I'll look ahead to matchday 44 in a championship next weekend. But between now and then, we've got a little special on Sunday, as Southampton are playing Preston on Tuesday night, that rearranged game. But of course, have a look ahead to that one and focus on that game on its own. In the meantime, though, we've got our Premier League preview tomorrow for City Luton and a weekend action. We've also got our League One Shorts video and loads more to come over the run-in from the EFL, non-league and the Premier League. But for now, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the podcast. And I'll see you back here tomorrow as our Premier League preview for the weekend is here. I'll see you there for that one. Get your predictions ready again.